So there's this thing that's been happening on my FYP lately where I have gotten completely sucked into content that can be only categorized as entertainment and not so much as your typical social media or creator content. For example, I found myself watching several episodes of InStyle magazine's The Interns show, which is filmed at their office, but it has that almost like Office, the TV show like quality and a lot of slapstick humor, but somehow it really hits. And I don't know, Yanni, if that's happened to you as well.
Oh, it certainly has. And I'm trying to think. I feel like even the Super Bowl, it was all about entertainment. Like thinking about the halftime show, Apple being part of it. Like I forget at times that brands are a part of it in a way, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like even with this series that you mentioned, I've seen that too. I love that I get sucked in, but it's like interesting that you forget it's made by the brand, but kind of the brand's integrally in it. It's super interesting, right?
Yeah, as long as you kind of walk away from it, remembering who is behind all of it, I think we're in this kind of cycle where if we go back maybe, I want to say 10, 11 years to when I was still starting out in advertising, and I think so were you. That was kind of the last big branded entertainment renaissance. And so I was actually part of the team that worked on a sitcom back at TBWA Helsinki
I
that
remember
sold
it.
each of those slots for real brands, and I feel like we're now back in the V2 of the branded entertainment renaissance. And so you're listening to House of Content, and if you didn't guess it already, we're discussing all things branded entertainment today. And I think social is really accelerating the adoption, but it's also redefining what branded entertainment means. So the filter now is almost like, this is not, is this an ad, but rather, would I watch this even if it were an ad? Is there a piece of content that you really enjoyed that kind of like fit through that filter lately?
Yeah, I actually really loved Sephora's Faces of Music, which was a Hulu partnerships. I think it was like a three-part series with Chappell Roan and some other artist that really got into sort of like the beauty and inclusion through the stories and these artists. And again, that's like taking the content and entertainment straight to streaming and even outside of social entertainment, and I'm kind of here for it. I want brands to invest in entertainment at that level as well, not just kind of like, we made an entertaining piece of content. Wow. And it didn't even have like a product benefit. I think we're talking about entertainment in a larger scale right now, which I think is the exciting part.
Yeah, what I'm seeing also is that entertainment traditionally you think is some type of a product integration into the old school way was obviously like you had like Coca-Cola very prominently featured in a scene and that's it, or maybe the integration of that brand or product in the storyline. Now it is almost having the brand and the creator in many times as the author of the story, but it's not just having series that mimic that episodic content storytelling, although we will touch upon that as well. What I'm seeing, for example, for uh, New York Fashion Week, Starbucks partnered with a group of fashion creators where the content was very much outfit of the day and running around New York City, and Starbucks obviously products and the locations were integrated into that, but it was entertainment in the sense that I would be consuming those outfits and that content either way. They just kind of flip the lens again on how to deliver that content.
Yeah, and I think it's smart for the brand because I can see an intentional push to that kind of content to create more of a brand world versus advertising world. And we're seeing that just from like a brand strategy point of view, but if you're going to expand into entertainment, you can't follow like the same playbook that you've used for your advertising. You can't follow the same best practices. You're going to have to make some exceptions in how your brand or product shows up. And I think they're a great example of understanding how the product is integrally part of people's lives. And so you can't dictate every part of how it shows up. And that's actually a way to make it feel like the brand more for you as the audience, right?
Yeah, and it's also flipping how people are consuming. For example, when I was researching the different entertainment formats done by brands, and again, InStyle's interns, we now have people and creators clipping the best scenes and content and recreating these highlight reels for a piece that essentially promotes a magazine, which is a great way of showing how consumption is also changing from passive consumption to active participation and remixing. And I think that is really interesting. It kind of ties back into this consumer behavior where completely different topic, but I just read through the cultural intelligence platform Winnin's report on how people are consuming and participating in sports culture on social, but it's a very, very
Mm-hmm.
similar way of how we're taking more authorship of content in many ways. And I think that's going to push brands also to go from campaign thinking to ongoing formats and how you're building that narrative through line from episodes, episodic content, behind the scenes participation. Like you mentioned, you're building out those worlds. What do you think that brands and creators should maybe think of when we're moving from this campaign thinking to show centric thinking?
I think we have talked about long term partnerships for a long time. And from the agency side, we've always like pitched to clients, like, hey, maybe we could consider something more long term. But it's been kind of hard because they live in this like campaign cycle, right? And so I think that my takeaway is like, I don't want to say like, oh wow, we're gonna go to like longer partnerships. Like that has been said multiple times, but I do think that there's gonna be more like these like live stage, like growing up with you partnerships, meaning we're gonna get to follow a relationship between a brand and a creator type throughout the course of their life. And that's actually what's going to make it more authentic than anything. And part of it is because the creator in question may make the product and brand actually part of their online persona. And we're already seeing a little bit of that, right?
Yeah, and I think for brands, they should also take cue of the entertainment creators on social. For example, New York Nico, there
Mm-hmm.
is a TV show. Wait, I've almost got it here.
I love these New York references. I feel like you get to see some content that I don't get to see just based on your location.
Yeah, I actually got it on our House of Content Instagram's algorithm, but it is called
Oh,
Revival of the Fittest with New York Nico. And essentially, it's again, it feels like partly a mockumentary or reality show that's filmed inside a record store, but it's very New York. They always open with the same scene of the shot of the store outside, and then it's 2 minute episodes. It really isn't branded entertainment as such, but I think it's a really great example of the types of formats that are doing really well on social today. I think another one that if we kind of like move from that lowbrow to highbrow is I don't know if you've seen the Airbnb content that they did around the Olympics. So Bring It Home is their series where they featured different athletes, like for example the Mexican figure skater in an Airbnb, kind of telling his
yep.
story and his journey as a figure skater in a country that doesn't have ice or snow. And so I think merging those worlds is really essential for storytelling. But I think on the other side of it, on the more technical side of it, I think it's going to push brands also to collaborate with different types of production houses and creators.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just go for, maybe your run of the mill campaign thinkers for work like this. Um, I wanted to also kind of talk about the entertainment logic and like kind of what makes entertainment versus brand. What do you think for you are sort of the key through lines in that distinction?
I mean, this is given, but I feel like I'm not being sold to. I think that's the
Hmm.
starting point. That it feels like there is a deeper story, and I'm allowed to sort of get immersed in it, right? In the content. And I think we've mentioned a couple examples, and in all of those, it feels like something's pulling you to continue watching. There's a bit of a sequel ish nature to them, or episodic nature. um and I think that speaks to investment too, like
Hmm.
really committing to make something not because it lines up with a campaign moment, but leaning into the story and where that can go, like seeing the response from the people consuming this entertainment and just sticking with it, right? Because when we think about shows versus advertising, there's a huge difference between the length of time that you stick to something. I think, like, even the this is going to be a long-term brand platform things, people get kind of fatigued, like, internally, and I see a lot more turnover and trying to like invent the wheel again and again. Whereas, like, you think about shows, and the best shows are on their, I don't know, 25th season. And so I think that's part of it.
Yeah, 20, like 20, 25 years later, we're still, if they bring somehow another spin-off of Sex and the City, we're there. We don't ask questions. We
Yeah.
might hate watch it, but we're there. And I think that speaks to the strength of, I guess, spending time in that, developing that narrative world. And if I translate it into social creative, or even into maybe launching something, using that as a vessel, you almost have to think about the story as a starting point, or the center of the universe, and then you're almost expanding it from there. What's the behind the scenes? What's the
Mm-hmm.
creator's POV? What's product marketing? How are these assets going to live on the landing page if you're selling this online? So thinking almost in worlds and less in linear kind of campaign launches. I think one great example, I'm sure this has been on your FYP, is everything that brands did around Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
I mean,
And
obviously, we have sent the just purely the outfit entertainment,
mhm,
back and forth. I think the way that they, fed the PR of it all with
mhm,
narratives is partly entertainment, because we've got an amazing female actor who's, recently had a baby and probably very happily married, but still we're really invested in this sort of narrative that lines up with the movie and creates hype around it,
mhm.
knowing that, like, it's not real. But I think there's a lot of fun in, the surround sound of it all the things that happened around the movie.
And for me, what I really enjoyed is I'm going to see it next week. I haven't seen it yet. But for
I'm
example,
doing the same.
I watched a full on video on how they created the what they call the skin room
Yeah.
for the main character's bedroom. And so they actually photocopied Margot Robbie's skin and superimposed it on a wall with vinyl so that it looked like actual real skin with like hair and imperfections. And again, like this all goes back to the very out there visual world of this film. And then I also saw Airbnb recreate the room with a creator and like kind of actually dream up staying in that room in the movie. And then H&M is now doing
Mm-hmm.
collections around Wuthering Heights as well. So you have all of these different brands kind of linking up with entertainment. And I think entertainment industry as such is also then bleeding back into brands. So it's a really interesting time. And I think I'm sure we've all in the advertising space seen the appointment of Pam Kaufman, who used to be president and CEO of international markets at Paramount, now head up entertainment at Gap. Any
Mm-hmm.
initial reactions or predictions what Pam's going to do in the role?
I wouldn't say predictions, but I feel like Gap has been really rethinking their approach to campaigns and advertising without losing the commercial aspect of things. Like, we saw the Cat's Eye collaboration, their holiday ad was essentially a piece of entertainment in itself. And so I think it's just doubling down on that and taking it further. I would love to see, to your point, like more of a world building happening and some entertainment that is not connected to just campaigns, like fleeting.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that this appoint appointing this new role means that it's sort of turning into more than a device for breakthrough in the campaign cycle of things.
For me, Gap is such an iconic American brand, and we're seeing a big American revival right now, and something that we
Mm-hmm.
will discuss in a later episode of House of Content, actually. But we're seeing this sort of Americana and 90s minimalism really rise up. And so my prediction is that Pam's going to do some type of series that is anchored in denim and Americana and maybe even 90s New York. We know it's all the rage, but I think that could be an area that we would see next in that realm. Either way, I'm really excited for this. I think we're going to see more brands do the same. Another example that comes to mind is DoorDash's Super Bowl campaign that was not
Mm-hmm.
run on TV during Super Bowl. So we had 50 Cent delivering beef because he obviously is the most famous beefer in the nation. So I think we're really seeing this bleed through. Um, what do you think? Why do you think that we're also craving this type of content online, and we are ready to almost consume more produced entertainment versus like watching just a Netflix series?
I think we're just fatigued, and we've talked about this before, but like TikTok Shop really did a lot for us. I think like turning TikTok from a place that you could discover and learn things that you didn't know about before, and there was sort of that uh quality to it, not necessarily the finesse in the videos itself, but the quality of thinking was very creative led. And now we're witnessing a time where it's commercial led. And so I think we are pretty fatigued because all these devices that are like quick cuts and hooks and all of that is actually starting to sound more like performance advertising than what it initially was. Like there was a time where we were watching somebody post 20 TikToks to tell us a story and we were getting our popcorn ready, to watch that instead of watching a show or a movie, and that was sort of the potential of what it could have been, but yet we pivoted to TikTok shop and ordering from like you know sites we don't know, who products that we don't even know where they're coming from. Like that was an interesting pivotal time that I think has contributed to this fatigue with quick hit
Hmm. Hmm.
addictive-ish content.
Yeah, I would say, just a quick side tangent. I did just buy like a six-piece skincare set from Dr. Malaxin's
Of course
Korean
you did.
skincare brand on TikTok, and I have to say, so far so good. It's pretty good, but I only
Listen,
bought it.
I've done it too, so no shade.
I only bought it though because I watched a video by this uh, daughter of a Korean. I believe she was a skincare expert, telling which brands they actually use in Korea and which brands are just for the Western markets. And Dr. Malaxin like passed that bar, so I was like, okay, I
Mm,
can I can order this. Either way, I also think that in a way, even if we've like the algorithms have moved more towards just selling UGC to us or selling through
yeah.
UGC, we still have this shifted behavior from creators like, Risa Tisa, Who the F Did I
Mm-hmm.
Marry, or even the later one from, I don't know if it still might be ongoing. Kat Limkit's My Month with a Billionaire series.
No,
So it's definitely
that's
put
the
that
one
on
that
your
I
watch
haven't
list.
watched. But it's
So,
not like I have time to watch it. So I do the recaps, which is kind of defeating the purpose of the conversation, but I'm
oh,
invested
but
now.
also very valuable. and
Yeah.
and again, that goes back to what we were saying about audiences remixing and reimagining and almost like re-editing stories, and that is part of the consumption as well. I think for me, maybe if we were to kind of look at what works versus what flops, I think there are a couple rules that you have to kind of like house rules that you have to play by. Obviously, I think the first one is who's writing it, because chances are, if you, and I'm maybe calling even us out or myself out, if it's just advertising people writing it, you might not get the angle or the purity of entertainment that you could. So I actually think we need to have both creators and comedians, and preferably maybe even like comedian creators or series writers
Yeah.
in these rooms
Not
to
AI,
no,
please,
no, no,
for
absolutely
this.
not AI. And I also think I also think, and this is another prediction that I think will happen, is that these brands like Gap, other brands that are very much entertainment and storytelling driven, they are starting to run writers' rooms versus
Mm-hmm.
campaign planning. So I think that's where you get that narrative integrity. I think the other part is also that you have to still think what the brand's role is, because oftentimes it's either very entertaining, but where's the brand? Or
Yeah.
it's very brand forward, but where's the entertainment? So like you as a creative director, how have you like kind of like balance that?
Well, we already started getting into it, but I think brands don't really know what their world looks like. They know what their logo assets look like, they know what their colors look like, but they don't have that bigger playbook. So, if you haven't been able to create that connection in the audience's minds to other things related to your product, it's going to be hard, right? And so, that's more the conversation. And as a creative director, like we had this moment where we asked like if your brand was a hotel, what kind of hotel would it be? And if you can't answer that, you probably haven't created enough of that connection in people's minds. But if the answer is the kind of hotel that you don't want your brand to represent, then that's another issue. And so it's starting to think about what the brand stands for in the audience's mind and building off of that versus sort of the playbook that we have had, which is related to your like, we even call it DBAs, meaning distinctive brand assets. And that just speaks to, the elements that make your brand instantly cue your brand in an ad. But that's not going to cut it. Like, opening with the same uh front card and ending with the same end card, those things don't really matter when you're talking about entertainment. They're actually taking away from the entertainment. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, how that playbook evolves and how brands that haven't really built it beyond advertising use cases are going to be able to do that. And I think Gap
Hmm.
is an example, and some other brands that have a bit of a legacy, and so they're able to kind of build from that, whereas like newer brands don't have that. I feel like Dairy Boy is an interesting example in the same world, and a brand that I feel like has started to create that. And it's maybe easier for these brands that are led by creators who themselves have a really clear aesthetic. They're including their house and the place that they live into the DNA of the brand. And Dairy Boy to me is like an example in that. But yeah, I think that's what it's really going to come down to.
And actually was just watching a video where another creator was recapping the brand Butter Girl. So Dairy Boy and
There you
Butter Girl,
go.
we have come full circle. But the founder there, she's doing fantastic content around her founder journey, starting a custom, or maybe I would say gourmet butter brand, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
again, we're seeing almost best brands borrowing from creators that are really great at storytelling, and then also borrowing from Hollywood, and we're all kind of mashing that
Yeah.
together. But I think if we could maybe summarize it, branded entertainment didn't really die. It's just only now starting to get good. Maybe this year or even next year in Cannes, we're actually going to start seeing some of those social first formats compete for film lions in Cannes.
Yeah.
So I think we're only scratching the surface, but we'll probably need to do a part two, because, this is a breaking story and we will bring you all of the latest developments. But thank you so much for watching House of Content, and remember to rate and review.